Hello and welcome to the first Don Rosa live stream this year. I just have to figure out if we're actually online, because now we have one viewer, but let me just quickly check here on both Facebook and YouTube if we are really online, or if... yeah, I think we are online. I can see us now, yeah. That's... yeah, perfect. So, anyway, let's start with our first and I think only Don Rosa live stream this year. As usual, I am Jano. I'm your host tonight, and you know me from the Don Rosa social media and the Don Rosa tours and so on. And yeah, this is actually the eighth Don Rosa live stream in total, and I just checked this afternoon, and it's almost exactly 4 years since our very first Don Rosa live stream back in 2020, when we started the live streams during the COVID times. And yeah, it's great of you that you still join us after all these years. And I think it's always a nice thing to do at least some live streaming towards the end of the year for all of you who couldn't join us during our signing tours, or who just like to join us anyway. And so let me, as usual, just have to see where my mouse cursor is, quickly introduce you to all the Don Rosa social media that we have. If you want to join us and follow us, you can do that on our main social media, which is the Facebook page. That's at facebook.com/DonRosaOfficial. We also have a Facebook group where you can talk and discuss all things Don Rosa with other fans and with Don himself. That is facebook.com/groups/DonRosaOfficial. We're also on Instagram. That's at Don Rosa. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter. That's also at Don Rosa. We're on Blue Sky. That's at donrosa.org. And yeah, also, as usual, just the quick info that if you enjoy our streams and what we do with tour vlogs during the signing tours and so on, you can support us by giving some tips on Ko-fi, which is ko-fi.com/DonRosa. And well, yeah, I think now it's time. We're at 39 viewers at the moment, which there's still some possible more viewers coming. But for now, let's see who we got here in the back end. I hope he's not already fallen asleep. But without further ado, here is the main event of the evening, Mr. Don Rosa. Don, do you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. I think my friend Dan Shane can. I need to introduce. I am Don Rosa, and this is Dan Shane, my best friend and computer guru. I thought it'd be fun if I needed some computer work today, so I invited him to come over and at first take part in this live stream.
Nice.
And we are doing it from
welcome, Dan.
Oh, thank you.
I was going to say that we are decided to do it from the comic book vault. Jano wanted to do either the studio, which requires a little bit too much trouble, but my library, which is very nice, but there's no comic books in the library. And here, it's one of the biggest comic book collections in America, at least between certain years. So we can do the old comic book challenge if somebody wants to, but generally that's not the entire point of the show. But that's a bonus maybe if somebody comes up with some really difficult. Well, let's recap what the comic book challenge is. I maintain that anybody, it'd have to be an American who knows a lot about American comics, if they could name the most obscure American comic book between the years, say, World War II to 1970. I say that I can find it in this room someplace, an original copy in nice shape, as long as we disqualify Archie comics, those are for girls, romance comics, those are for girls too. Funny animals, except Dell. Let's see, I didn't prepare this spiel, but most Westerns, except the really minor companies, and most war comics, except I don't have any Atlas War comics.
I thought you said you had everything.
That's everything except what I don't have.
Okay, all right.
But that's still a lot of stuff. I have everything within those certain parameters. Superheroes, Westerns, cowboys, war comics of the DCs. Anyway, if somebody wants to try me in between the questions, Jano, what did you want to do first? You already got some questions?
Well, not too many. Just
Really?
somebody is asking, is that your garage? And yeah, so probably just maybe reintroduce where you're streaming from, what the Comic Vault is all about.
This is my comic book collection that I've been working on for 60 years. Generally, I've got comics in here all the way back to the late 30s, but my complete sets start, say, well, I like the Atomic Age and the Silver Age. Now, these are both nomenclature that were used commonly by comic book collectors back in the 70s, maybe into the 80s. But the Atomic Age has been forgotten, and it's lumped together with the Golden Age now, which I think is preposterous, because the Atomic Age is the comics from World War II until 1970, which were totally different from the Golden Age, which is early 30s to 1947, 1945. I don't know why they've given up that nice nomenclature, but
Everybody that remembers that is dead.
yeah. Oh, and here you can't see this is head on, but this is a full set of TV Guide. Of course, people don't know what TV Guide is anymore, but that was one of the best-selling, maybe one of the 3 best-selling magazines in America, along with Sports Illustrated and Playboy.
Reader's Digest.
And Reader's Digest, but that's just reprints from other magazines.
Oh, okay.
And there's fanzines, and there's like right here, 4-color. Am I still on camera? Yeah, 4-color comics.
Yeah.
1 to 1,040. Full set of Walt Disney's comics and stories. Full set of Donald Duck. Full set of blah, 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 blah. And then Dell Comics, Marvel Comics. These are DC Comics, Quality Comics, dozens of different small publishers that most people have never heard of. But you asked me where we were, and that's and there's even more on this wall here, which you can't see. Chest of drawers with my White Castle items, my magazines like Mad Magazines over there in that corner, Creepy, Eerie, National Lampoon. Anyway, that's why I like to do the live streams from here. I like to show off. Who doesn't like to show off?
Of course. And I think now that we have Dan as a special guest today, I already got a question. Somebody's asking, or somebody's actually saying, Mr. Shane, great. Yeah, that was actually also one of the questions. Who's the guy who's sitting with Don? But the one I'm referring to is Ted is asking, Mr. Shane, great, thanks for preparing those wondrously detailed blueprints of Scrooge's money bin. So as
this
long
is the guy
as
that
we have
designed the blueprints. Well, we both designed them, but he executed them on a computer,
Right.
of course.
Right.
So maybe we can talk about the backstory. How did that come about, and how did you prepare them? What went into this?
I think Don should say where the idea came from before he even asked me to be involved with it. It was for a story.
Well, it was the idea was just the blueprints. I always wanted to do that, so they wouldn't publish it without a story to encapsulated.
Oh, okay.
So I came up with a story and saved 2 pages where we would design and you would execute the blueprints in old-fashioned style. Blueprints. How many people know what blueprints are? It's all done on computers now, but even when I was in the Don Rosa company was still in business, my job after I graduated from college and did about 5 years in the manual labor division, my job was calculating contracts, preparing bids using blueprints. By that time, they were then printed large sheets of paper, landscape style actually, but it was blue on white. Do you know the explanation of what blueprints? Go ahead. Why were they some sort of photographic method?
Well, essentially, they were a negative of what somebody actually drew.
Why a negative?
Because of the way the printing process worked. It was a chemical printing process. I'll try not to get too deep into the weeds here, but
nice if I had some blueprints.
But when somebody originally drew plans, they didn't draw white ink on blue paper. It was actually white paper with blue ink, and then it was put in a tube that a chemical gas was injected into it, and the paper that was going to be printed on would be laid against the original drawing, and it would sort of chemically melt the picture onto the print paper, but it would be reverse colors. So what was drawn in blue would turn out white. What showed up as white space would be blue. Got a book there that shows it.
Keep talking.
Okay. And it's news to me. I just learned today that the idea for drawing the plans came first. I thought the story came first, and then he just wanted to insert the blueprints into it.
I can't find it.
Okay. In all this room, you can't find that.
I got a full set of Don Rosa library here, but
the idea was everyone knows Don's attention to detail. He tries to make everything as realistic as he possibly can, because we all know that the ducks are real people. They're not even animals. And so he wanted real blueprints, or at least real drawings drawn to scale, as if the money bin could actually be built.
I can't find which edition book they're in. So.
He was aware that.
That's enough.
Okay. Don was aware that my major in college was architectural design. And while we've known each other for, somebody just commented he has a large blueprint on his wall. I wish I'd have brought one with me.
I do?
No, you don't. The idea was, since I had...
You see them right there.
There they are. Yeah, there they are. I had the technical... There we go. Now you're talking.
That is the blueprint. Although they were actually done that way. To fit into a comic book, we had to turn them.
Yeah, we did 2 separate pages, 2 sheets
for
the comic.
This is the other
but
one.
That's the poster, right?
The poster, yes.
That's the full-on
So
poster.
this is over a 2-page spread, and they did it so there's no gutter. What do you call it? So it's one sheet of paper going across. So that's what am I too close? Whoa, too close.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you got the idea.
And there's some extra detail on the poster that didn't make it into the comic sheets because we needed to flesh it out a little bit. So I did some cutaways showing the trap door in front of Scrooge's desk that would eject an interloper into the trash can.
And what you just saw here, Dan designed, be made into a poster for a convention in Europe shortly after September 11th, 2001. So I couldn't get to Europe, and I guess they just gave away the posters unsigned. But I don't know. I never got one. But So that was. So now Stefan has some of these large posters like this.
So the idea was the blueprints need to be of a real building. Just like Scrooge is real, Donald is real.
Why do I have this thing in front of me? Let's push it over here to you.
The blueprints had to be real, so I drew them to scale. It was done on a computer in computer-aided design. Don came up with most of the gags. He allowed me to contribute.
He did some good ones.
He allowed me to contribute a few.
What's Jano doing? Choking?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Just gagging in the background. I think your favorite gag was the one where I came up with the broom closet.
That was my idea. The broom closet and the employee lounge
exactly the same size, right next to you.
No, I thought yours was the redundant generator.
Oh,
the redundant generator.
Yeah, and the eraser dust that we collected.
Yeah.
So it could be reformulated. Anyway, most of the gags were Don's. He used me for technical expertise, and the money bin was actually reviewed by somebody in Scandinavia who Don told me was their version of Frank Lloyd Wright, or okay, all right.
No, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember when we did a sort of a live stream like this for an Italian group.
Yes.
Of architects.
Oh, that's right. They actually used that to do a full study on how much the money bin could actually contain. Okay. I didn't say
he's getting an echo.
No.
And also there was a guy here in the United States who built an actual Lego money bin based on those plans. It was about 2 feet tall. And he brought a section of it to me at a convention in Las Vegas that I could sign, and he could put the wall back onto the side of the money bin. And I don't know what happened to that. He said it cost him $10,000 in Lego parts. And it was in detail. It matched his blueprints as well as possible.
There's another young fella from Finland, I think he was 14 years old at the time, that cut it all out of cardboard, including all the individual little desks on floors that he could slide out.
That's how the Lego job was, I think. Anyway, is that enough about the blueprints? There's lots of other things he could do.
No, I'm not going to talk about that. The point was it needed to be real. People actually built it to prove that it was real, that it could actually work. So it's not just a cartoon idea.
And thank you, Ted, for asking that, because that's one of the things that I was hoping Dan would discuss.
So actually something we just talked about like a few minutes before the stream started in the back end, and somebody is already asking it because somebody's asking, Don, can you show a prototype of the new figurine that's coming out?
I saw somebody ask about that, so I went up and got the prototype sitting right here off camera. There, I guess I'll have to hold it up closer to the camera. This is based, I got to hold his feet down because he's not connected to the base. Now, is it out of focus, or will it focus on it if I hold it still?
Focus,
it's now it's in focus.
Not too bad.
Of course, this is obviously not painted. 3-dimensional. Got to keep holding or it's going to disappear off the. This is based on. I drew 3 views of it, and Stefan's his own personal computer guru who knows 3D printing and 3D sculpture did this job. And we do it a couple of times and adjust the size of the beak or the tail. And I remember on one adjustment, he fixed the tail on his hat like it's flipping in the when he's thrusting the. I like that. To add some action to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and of course, it'll be painted when the finished product will be hand painted. But it will be different in one respect from this. So don't be surprised. I don't know if anybody can guess what was censored, but it'll still be very nice. Yeah, leave that there for a few minutes.
Yeah, he can sit in too.
Yeah. And we got a triumvirate here.
So
what else can we say about this? Jano,
yeah, I actually have the link for the people if they're interested in it, because I hear from Stefan that it's supposed to be delivered to him in sometime in January, and it will be available for ordering then. And I'll just put the link to Stefan's shop here at the bottom of the image. That's www.comic-Spielzeug, a nice German word, which means toys.de. So if you're interested in any sort of Don Rosa merchandise, also like signed prints like we have during the signing tours, or figurines and anything you can do, go to the website. Also, you can sign up for the Stefan's newsletter there, and he will send you an email when the figurine is available.
I appreciate that, Jano, but you'll notice when I was showing you this, I was just showing. I'm not asking people to buy it. That's not something I do. I don't try to sell Don Rosa. I like to talk about ducks. I just wanted to show people what it looked like. But now you say it's on his, he's got this on the internet. Does he have an image of the final version? He must if he's trying to sell it.
Let me check, but I think no, it's not yet on the website, because he only will put up the order once he actually has it.
That there's a shovel in the final version.
Yeah.
Where would they see that? He carries the final version around at shows, so they've seen it at conventions in Europe. Yeah. He has a shovel in the final version.
So let me see if we have
anybody can guess why.
Actually, the same guy who asked about seeing the prototype also asked, can we see a bit more of Don's White Castle collection?
No, because you have to move the table to get to him. This table is pushed up against the chest of drawers. But thank you anyway. Okay. That's a ringer. You know what a ringer is?
Yeah.
People we've put in the audience to ask questions to get the thing going. At the time, I didn't know I was going to push the
Why
table.
would anybody dream that they were going to see White Castles turning into this?
What's that doing up there? It's some of the White Castle collection.
You can show them some of that.
I must have needed room. This is only 1996.
Oh, that's new.
It's an unused cup. I've got them back that I got myself in 1970. No, not 1970.
How old is that butter dish?
I think that's fake. Oh. No, I think that's some homemade dish. Yeah, I think I'll talk to you. So far, we haven't said anything about comic books. We haven't, or even especially talking about blueprints. We've been talking about figurines. I think that's something somebody made in a butter dish.
Is that the little White Castle restaurant?
Yeah, but they didn't look like that.
No, I mean it's pretty basic. That's supposed to be the entry door right there.
Yeah.
And the windows with the curtains hanging in them, but it's like as Don said, I think that's homemade.
You're getting me interested in White Castle.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, here's the engraving of the creator's signature. RUTZ. It looks like Ruts.
This is the world's first fast food restaurant, hamburger place anyway. And they didn't serve on paper plates. They put it on china.
That's right.
And these are from, I think these are from the 30s. I can tell by the White Castle symbol. Let's see how. Yeah.
Oh, if you'd held still, they couldn't see it real well.
It's hard to.
Now hold it still. Hold it still. Little focus. There you go.
Yeah, that's very good.
Very good. Yeah.
Now, if I start digging stuff out of here,
White Castle hamburgers cost a nickel. when they first came out.
They came in little cartons, and they still do. Little cardboard cartons. And of course, I've got collections of, where's the oldest mother I've got? No. Talk about something else. See, I can't get the drawer all the way open. Nowadays, they come in boxes like this. That's the 100th anniversary. I'm showing it to the computer. I don't want to show it to the computer. Show it to the camera.
Yeah. Hold it still. Back up. You got too much light on it. Too much light on it. Get it to an angle. Yeah, that's a little better.
Ah, that's better.
That's a new one. That's only a couple of years ago.
But each little cardboard box was there you go. Now you're talking. Each little cardboard box was shaped like the actual building.
Tell me, I can't see the screen. You tell me what to do.
Here.
Over there?
It's really getting a reflection for some reason because it's too white. I guess.
I don't know if anybody's interested in this besides me. Me and Dan are interested in it. So that's from the 30s. Now, why would there be a cardboard box that a hamburger came in from the 1930s?
Those are cool.
The explanation is on one of these. Here it is. I bought this on the on eBay. What do you say over here? Is
actually?
I think we can. I think we can see it. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't like him holding my cardboard box. Don't go like that.
Yeah, this is better.
Oh, you're making me nervous. Okay, but this one. Why does this one exist?
Tell who means more, the White Castle.
September, Wednesday the 3rd, 1952. Bill, Edgar, Kenny, Clark, Fred, Farrell, and I went uptown in Indianapolis. Fred got a parking ticket. So they saved this as a memory of a souvenir of when Fred got a parking ticket in 1952. And I paid $10 for that on eBay. Now, $10 for a 1952, or much less these. I don't think these were from the 30s. I think these came out of file cabinets of closed White Castle companies. You know, office examples.
These will all be showing up on Antiques Roadshow, so stay tuned.
All right, did we get rid of those? Yeah. Anyway, that's so. What should a 1930 White Castle hamburger carton be worth when comic books in America in slabs that are not more than a couple of years old sell for thousands of dollars? It's insane. Those things should be worth more than diamonds. I'm glad they're only $10. I don't see them anymore, though. I haven't bought any White Castle memorabilia off eBay for years. I've got all these books spread out all over the floor here.
They're up in the way.
Can you see well enough to read the questions? Pick out some. Help Jano pick out questions.
Okay.
So somebody is asking, or somebody is saying, we need some news about the puppies.
I could go get one and bring it down.
Oh, don't do that. That would be the end of the show.
Yeah, probably better not do that.
Somebody's asking about a live-action Scrooge movie being made in France.
Oh, I haven't heard more. Jano, remember when we get reports on that now and then? I haven't heard about that. Should be finished by now. It's a short.
I think it's finished, yeah, but it's only like 15 minutes or so. But I think it's available on, maybe it's on YouTube. I don't know exactly.
Well, like we say, maybe somebody will write in.
Yeah, and so somebody's asking, is he a human Scrooge McDuck or is he a 3D animated Scrooge?
No, it's a live action. It's people, as it should be, because Barks is Scrooge and Barks is Donald. They're all people.
Right.
Disney's Donald Duck is a quacking duck.
Okay, so but do they have feathers?
No, they're people. They're people.
All right. I'm new here. I don't know.
But that's good. See, now you can, if somebody sends in a comic book challenge, you can see it and judge it, whether it's a good one. Now, Jano, being German, that's not his fault. But he can't tell.
He couldn't help it.
How many people will write in and say, "Oh, do you have an Uncle Scrooge #1?" Oh, yes, I do. We once, and that's one of the best-selling comics in American history. Looking for really obscure, old, nasty horror comics or some obscure Dell or anything.
Okay, now they're asking about movies you've seen lately, maybe
I
even.
haven't seen a movie in 5 years.
Well, he claimed that you saw the latest Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, that's when I bought sight unseen, because I just knew no matter how bad it was, I had to have it in my collection.
So you bought it on Blu-ray so you could watch it here.
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing I did.
What do you want to know? Want to know if I like it?
I think you wanted to know what you thought about it.
I thought it was really good, especially if you cut out all the action scenes. Yeah. But I feel that way about just about any movie made in the last 30, 40 years. The action scenes are the boring parts. Yeah. That's one of the main reasons that movies have gone astray.
Yeah, I tend to agree that the characters and the situations were more interesting than anything that happened.
Yeah.
So here's a comic book question from a couple minutes ago.
Not a challenge. It's ready to go.
No. Somebody's asking, Don, is it true that you drew the last panel first and worked your way to the beginning when working with a story? Or did you draw the panels in...
Yeah. I would write the last panel first. And then the second, and if I know what the last panel is, I know how the story ends, then I'd write to the second to the last panel, and then I'd write the third. And literally, I would go panel by panel backwards until I got somewhere in the middle. And then I'd go and do the second most important part of a story, of a plot. And I think this is another way that modern movies get it all screwed up with the narrative quality. The second most important part of a movie is how the plot starts. So I would start from the first panel and work my way towards the center. And I don't worry about the middle of the movie, because that's where the action and the humor scenes are. And they don't matter. They just make it more interesting and more fun. But as far as the plot goes, it doesn't make any difference what is in that section. And that's a good time to ask that question, is the problem with modern movies. People think the middle of the movie is the most important part, which then it's boring.
Somebody asked an easy one if you had a Vampirella #1.
Yeah. That's only in the 70s.
1969.
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay.
I got a Playboy #1 right here.
Yeah.
First 10 years of Playboy, right?
Depending on your audience, that may be more interesting.
Now, those were good magazines. First 10 years.
They were.
Didn't even have girls on the covers.
So talking about movies, somebody's asking, what is Don's favorite Western movie?
Oh, gosh. Usually I say The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, even though it's in black and white. But then there's other, Red River. What's another? Not that one with what's her name? What's another great Western? Destry Rides Again. Shane.
That's in color.
No, I'm just saying it's funny that the best Western movie would not be in color. Most all Jimmy Stewart Westerns.
Yeah.
Who made those? Michael Mann? No. The other man.
Yeah, I think it was his father.
Oh, really?
Anthony Mann.
Yeah. Questions about movies. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that was a good one though.
What's another great Western that I'm not thinking of?
No, my favorite movie is a Western, but that's mine. Oh. Yours.
Out of the West was one, I guess you mean.
Yeah.
These poor people these youngsters out here know what Cinerama is. Let's see if anybody knows where. There's what Cinerama is.
Yeah, that's what I'd ask first.
No,
somebody mentioned High Noon. I can go along with that. Yep.
Oh, I see that. We naturally, it would take a lot of practice to look at the camera, but if we at least put the laptop here, so we're looking in the direction.
We're almost looking at the camera. Yeah. Somebody's asking about Columbo and Nero Wolfe. Oh, somebody loves Cinerama. You're my new best friend.
He's still alive. How can anybody not? Most people wouldn't even believe that's Cinerama. It sounds like a science fiction idea.
Okay, comic
Okay, now somebody mentioned Windjammer, which was not technically a Cinerama movie, though it was released by
Oh, so
Cinerama.
Panavision?
No, it was a 3-camera process, but it was called Cinemiracle. And Cinerama, let's
I was starting to describe it, but he is a big Cinerama.
Oh yeah, but let's really bore everybody to tears now. The Cinerama, this is one camera, and then there'd be another camera here and another camera here. So it's shooting across itself. Cinemiracle, instead, if I'm remembering correctly, actually shot the 3 cameras left to right, the way you would actually view it, except that it used mirrors that would be necessary to reorient.
Cinerama is first.
All right, Cinerama is 3 cameras, as I said. 1, 2, 3. They were actually called Abel, Baker, and Charlie.
You're using this, and they're going to think the image was.
It was.
The 3 individual images.
The 3 individual images were not quite square. They were actually taller than they were wide. But when you put them together, then you get a wide picture, but it's 3 pictures put together. And that's why they had so much trouble filming in Cinerama. For instance, for Don and myself to be in the same picture, we would practically have to be standing, looking straight at each other for it to look like we're looking at the audience because of the angle of the camera. It was so technical that people who knew their business making movies, such as John Ford, who made some of the greatest Westerns ever, he hated the process because there was just too much technology involved and he thought it distracted from the story. And I understand that. But at the same time, if you've ever been to an IMAX film or an OmniMax film or gone to Walt Disney World and sat on some of their Circle Vision movies, watch yourself. That's what Cinerama does. It gets right out there. The whole idea was to envelop you, to involve you, and it came along before the big 3D movie craze of 1953 showed up. But the idea was to get people back into the theaters, away from their newfangled television sets, because the only way you could see a beautiful widescreen movie was in a theater.
And now to how do people watch movies? On their phone.
Yeah. Let's not go into that.
So there was one question. What's your most expensive or beloved comic in your own collection?
Okay, don't ask the most expensive. You're missing the point.
Yeah.
Love
it. Be loved.
Don't love it. Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one that's right up here. That'll give me a chance to talk about that. We show this all the time.
Yes, I do have the Blu-ray for Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm, for whoever asked it. And that was a beautiful job of restoration, practically a miracle. Thanks for asking.
Oh, is that over on this?
Yeah.
There's my favorite comic of all time. The first issue. That's the first issue of Uncle Scrooge. The first issue when Dell Comics editors decided this character was so popular that they were going to give him his own magazine. So Barks redesigned the character to be more of a hero, maybe an anti-hero, but gave him a backstory. And this was my favorite comic book when I was a kid. I didn't know it was the first issue of Uncle Scrooge, but Carl Barks, for the first 5, or maybe not quite 10, at least the first 5 issues of Uncle Scrooge, he was doing it for adults, or at least so adults and kids could both enjoy it. And then his editors told him to dumb it down a little bit, which broke his heart. But this was before he dumbed it down. And there's so much mature emotion in this story that even as a little kid, I loved it. And my second favorite was this one, The Golden Helmet. And these are both my my sister's copies, one-owner copies. They're mine now because when she moved away from home.
That makes it this two-owner. It's in the family, though.
You're right. I better change that.
Yeah.
She never comes down here.
Yeah, that's right.
No, they're yeah, that's right. Two.
Mom's away. Nobody can tell her.
All right, there.
All right, that's taken care of.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was fighting part of the cover anyway.
Yeah.
Of course, the cover didn't look so nice because my favorite comics I drew on. See, I drew on this one. I drew on that.
They can't see
I drew
that.
all through that. But well, I'm looking right at it. I just remember that I filled that Viking ship in with, so it is easier to see. So that's my favorite comic. But let's get one comic book challenge so I can. But don't ask to see my most expensive comic. That's boring.
They did ask what's the rarest comic you own. That has nothing to do with expensive.
That's
it's just
right.
rare. Yeah.
I don't know. I never cared.
Mm,
I got a real rare one. Huh?
Somebody's asking, I don't know if it makes sense, but Don, a comic book challenge, do you have the American editions of Tintin published in 1950s, 60s by Golden Press?
Very good question. But that's not a comic book. That's a hardback book. No, I've never even seen one, but I knew they existed. And they went out of business pretty quick, just like the American editions of Asterix. We had those for a couple of years in the late 60s. Now, I've got a full set of Asterix books in English, but of course, comes from Great Britain, more sophisticated area where they speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And here's...
You were talking.
And here's something that I think, if I remember correctly, you just mentioned it a couple of weeks ago during Just to Us on the signing tour, because I remember that you were talking about meeting the guy who were part of the committee that invented those comic book slabs, because somebody here is asking, was CGC slabs meant to be opened when they first came out? Maybe you can tell that story.
All right. When
Also, somebody wants to see a Tubby number 5.
all right. What do I do first? I'm trying to think of it's hard to come up with names now when I get so many names. The fellow who invented slabbing. Okay, I'll fill that name in later. When he announced the name, the whole idea of slabbing, which is just like they legitimately or intelligently do with coins or stamps or gum cards or any other two-dimensional item, they seal them in slabs of plastic to protect them and also to be graded by experts. So when you buy them and sell them, especially over the internet, that's the main reason for the slabbing of comics, was sales over the internet. When this fellow came up with the idea and he was announcing it to all of the, he organized a reception during, not part of, but during the San Diego International Comic-Con. And he invited all the major collectors and all the major dealers to come, and he was going to display this new idea. It wasn't a new idea, but he was just going to announce he was forming a company that would slab comics the same way that other companies slab coins and stamps, like I said. And in order to entertain the guests, it was a reception with a little buffet. And to entertain and schmooze with the guests, he invited 2 comic book artists to help him promote this wonderful idea. One was Neil Adams, and another one was a fellow who had just won a couple of Eisner Awards named Don Rosa.
Gasp.
Because we never dreamt in 1,000 years that any imbecile would keep them in the slabs. That was just for purchase purposes over the internet. And now, well, of course, investors have taken over the hobby. I can't even afford to get any copies of the comics between 1946 and 1970, especially if they're slabbed, because investors who have no interest, and that's why they buy them slabbed. They don't care about reading them. They probably won't even, they'll just keep them in the safety deposit box.
They're just gold bricks to them.
Yeah. They took over that, and what pisses me off or puzzles me is real collectors have adopted the idea in imitation of the investors, because the investors are cool. And somebody who says they love comics still has them slabbed. And there's no purpose in it. It does not protect the comic any more than every single one of these tens of thousands of comics are in Mylar sleeves. They protect it just as well as a slab, but you can open it up and smell it. So I was one of
feel rather strongly about it.
Yes. People who think they want to tell me they love comics and they show me their slab comic collection. I say, you don't like comics at all. You hate them. You're destroying them for the purpose they were created. I've already got on my camera, I deslabbed a very rare comic. You're talking about really rare comics. It's right here. I just bought it. I just got it 2 or 3 days ago. I always claim that I have a full set of EC comics. Who hasn't heard me say I have a full set of EC comics?
You said that to me.
I have a full set of original story EC comics, but I don't have a full set of the annuals. Let's look at EC annual.
Yeah.
This is an EC annual. This is an annual of their war comic line. And what these were, a very clever idea. These are 3 remaindered comics from the previous year bound together with a new cover.
3 or 5?
3.
Okay.
You're trying to, is this a Monty Python sketch?
No, I'm just asking.
Right. 3, sir.
All right.
Here's their first. Here's their first Two-Fisted Annual. They had the war comic called Two-Fisted Tales. If anybody has seen the prints I sell at American shows, I have a parody print of the Two-Fisted Tales comic, an EC comic, and it's called Web-Footed Tales. So they had their weird science and their weird fantasy comics. So once a year, they come out with the weird science fantasy annual. Let's see, I got it pretty close but I have to watch out for that circular light. So, and there's the first weird science fantasy annual. And here's the one that I just bought, and I've got no, this is the third. This isn't the one I just bought. That's the third one. I've had that for several decades. Now, here it is, number 2. Here is our second annual Tales of Terror. I just bought this, and it was slabbed, and it was expensive, but it was a comic I really needed. And if you watch Jano's website, the group website where I can post, I can't post on the regular website because it's Jano's site. Only he can post on it. Watch him. All right.
Don't you need to visit the restroom or something right now?
Anyway, but that's a rare comic because there weren't many of them sold because they cost a quarter in 1952.
25 cents says right there. You mind if I ask a question about these?
You'll have to send it in to Jano.
Oh, okay. I'll let you. My question was, did they? Wasn't the idea of these, if they had leftover comics at the end of the year, they would
remainder.
They
didn't print new ones.
They didn't. Oh, that was my question.
Yeah.
They didn't print new ones.
They were remainder. They just the ones that weren't sold, but
they rebound them. Okay, cool.
They did that. Landstone Comics did that too with some of my comics because Bruce Hamilton was a collector of old comics. But like I say, you'll see. I did a photo essay of me busting that one out of the slab. What was I asked?
Tubby number 5.
Tubby number 5. Okay.
We'll just talk quietly among ourselves.
Crew, I haven't. It's not too obscure, but look at it. Tom and Jerry, Tarzan, Tom Corbett, Tubby 140. I hope he knows what a Tubby number 5 looks like. You'll have to write in because there's no number on the cover. Tom Corbett, Space Cadet, Tubby. I have to take out number 1, 3, 4. Numbers on the cover.
There you go. Oh, just like that. There you are.
Yeah.
And
Proof's in the pudding.
I'm sure you won't be able to see the number. It's right here, right under the Dell comic symbol. Should I even try to get that in the camera?
I see it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I did. Okay, now I see it.
Ah, yeah,
Here it
there
is. Number 5, 10 cents.
Yeah.
Nice shape. This was a Malachaw comic.
No.
Fellow I bought a collection of comics in 1970, who bought them off the newsstands himself. One of the original comic book collectors, like Ray Fouché, who I want to talk about later. All right, let's do something. I gotta put this back in order, or I can set it aside for now. That'll give me a chance to look through my Tubby comic.
There you are. That's how I work.
What else?
Maybe while you
Make
put
it
it
more
back,
obscure. Everybody's got a Tubby number 5, though.
I noticed somebody asked the question. I don't know if you want to answer it. What was your favorite story of your own?
The last one I ever did, The Prisoner of White Agony Creek.
Okay.
I like that so much. Well, there was other reasons, but I like that story so much. I knew that I'd never create another story I liked more, so quit.
Place to stop.
Yeah.
which EC comics would you recommend to? Somebody's asking, which EC comics would you recommend to someone who has never read any?
All of them. No, what? They're science fiction comics. What would you? That's a hard question.
It depends on what they like.
Yeah. They had the best war comics of all time.
Yep.
They were anti-war in the early 50s. They had the best horror comics of all time. They had the best science fiction comics of all time.
And they had the best funny comics of all time.
Especially, they created Mad Comics, which became Mad Magazine, is the greatest name in American humor, I guess. It's gone now. Or it's nothing.
But it just depends on what you like. The funny thing is,
here they are. Right? They're off camera.
Yeah, as Don and I were growing up, our favorites were the science fiction comics, but those were the ones that didn't sell originally.
That's right.
In the 50s, everybody wanted the horror stuff, but the science fictions are the ones that really I felt had the creative art and interesting, forward-thinking ideas. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, my favorite run of EC nobody asked me, but my favorite run.
I have you back every time we
I
like having a co-host.
My favorite run of EC Comics were the shock suspense stories.
The crime comics.
Well, they weren't. No, that's crime suspense stories.
Well,
shock suspense stories would mix them up. They put.
Oh, you mean they have horror stories?
They weren't so much horror, but
I'll bet there was a crime committed somewhere.
Yeah. There'd usually be a crime story, but there would also be something similar to Two-Fisted Tales, a science fiction story. It was sort of an omnibus.
Yeah.
Of their.
I'm glad you meant when I'm ashamed of myself. I didn't mention that genre of American comics, crime comics. I don't collect crime comics, but I certainly, when I was first collecting EC comics around 1969, 1970, it was when I got one of those two, crime suspense stories or shock suspense stories. Those were the most adult stories. You could have made a full-length movie out of any one of those stories, and
later they did.
And they also they sort of, I don't remember exactly what instance it was, and this is not the sort of thing they would do, but they copied closely enough a Ray Bradbury story that he had.
No, they stole it. They stole it.
Okay, which story was it? Well, never. I don't know.
I don't remember what it was, but he wrote him a letter asking for some sort of credit that he was expecting in the mail that just hadn't showed up yet. Yeah.
But the thing was, he asked them if they wanted to adapt any story they wanted because he loved EC Comics.
He'd let them do it. Yeah.
And those are great. And Anyway, I'm so tempted to move that camera over here and just see that whole row of EC boxes right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 boxes in this whole room. You can take everything else except my Uncle Scrooge's. If I could keep those. And people say, oh, I thought you thought Uncle Scrooge comics were the best. Well, you know, apples and oranges. These were anthologies, and I love the Karl Barks's Uncle Scrooge character. There's no characters in these comics. These are it's an anthology. Walt Disney's Comics and Stories were an anthology, but these don't have continuing characters. Now, in the new, see, there's one I could pull out, but it's behind a post. The New Direction, when they were put out of business, essentially by Senate subcommittees about how comic books created juvenile delinquency, which was a buzzword in the mid-50s, they canceled all of their wonderful crime comics and horror comics and science fiction comics, and they came out with a New Direction comics, which were way too sophisticated. And then they had the continuing characters like psychoanalysis comics, had 3 different psychiatrist stories. MD comics
had surgeons.
3 different continuing doctors. Oh, and they were wonderful, but
they're still beautifully drawn.
They are the same artists and writers.
And if you think Don's comics are wordy, if you think they have to fill in the word balloons on his stuff, you've not seen an EC comic yet. It takes 4 hours to read a single EC comic.
But those were the comics that the smart kids read.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, if I may say so, some lady in one of the last trips I made to Europe. She was saying, I loved your comics, but my sister, she didn't care for them, and she'd always say, "There's too many words," and I just roll my eyes and say, "That's good. Yeah, you're sharp."
Yeah. You noticed that?
Yeah, she said.
There were actually a couple people asking Dan, "Do you have a favorite Don story?"
Favorite what?
Don.
Oh, Don story. I'm sort of
the comic, not
okay.
private things.
Oh, not that story.
No.
Okay, we won't tell that here. Well, naturally, I'm partial to the Beagle Boys versus the Money Blend for some reason. Yeah. But as far as the one that touches me the most, it actually is from Life of Scrooge, and it's.
I don't think I know this.
It's the one where
Zombie the Zombie.
No,
forget that.
No, that doesn't exist. That's another universe entirely. No, it. Maybe I should say the panel that affects me the most is the one that you lifted from the Ghost and Mrs. Muir. But that's
the panel where they're walking through the wall,
right? Yeah. And that just touches me because it's death in a comic, and
you can hear Bernard Herrmann music playing.
Yeah, I do, and it just once again it makes the characters real. So that's mine.
Thank you. That was nice. There.
I shocked him.
Is Jano? You still there?
I'm still here. Yeah, we have another question about your collections. Somebody is saying, "I love Don's collections, in particular his movie BD collection and his hardcover books collection. About these collections, which is Don's favorite episode of Columbo, and which is his favorite story of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Holmes books and of Rex Stout's Nero Wolf's book? Thank you from Italy."
Columbo, I didn't see. I only remember the when it was part of Mystery Movie.
NBC Mystery
So
Movie.
those are the early ones.
Yes.
But my favorite one would, I think, without even knowing most of the show, I've got them on BD, the entire series. Someday I'll watch it. But the ones that I watched when it was part of the NBC Mystery Movie, all of which were good, it would be the one starring Patrick McGowan. He knew that was coming.
Yep.
I love anything Patrick McGowan.
Telegraph that one.
Yeah. But what was the other question? What's the favorite?
He was He was
Sherlock
probably
Holmes
directed
story.
both, didn't he?
I don't know.
Arthur Conan Doyle, shit, has to be the Hound of the Baskerville. Just, I wouldn't even say it's the best written. I don't know, but it just the imagery is wonderful, and it was a full book. It wasn't a short story.
That's right. It was one of the 4 novels. Yeah.
And what was it? Nero Wolf. I don't know that one. I got a full set though. No, I don't. I still don't have Curtains for 3. I don't think it was in hardback. That's why I don't have it.
Everybody write that down.
Curtains for 3. Yeah, I'd do you a drawing for Curtains for 3. It's not that old. They go back to the early 30s, but this is early 50s, mid 50s. Curtains for 3 in hardback. Was that the only 3 things I was asked? These are good questions.
Then
anytime we do this again, he's going to be here. This is great because I'm being entertained at the same time I'm trying to entertain. So.
Does Don have some recommendations about Western comics? I like them, but can't find anything new to read. Maybe he knows about some I don't know about.
I remember liking Batlash. Did they get past Showcase Comics in DC in 1969? Batlash, not Batman. Western comic. The DC Westerns, the Atlas Westerns, that's Marvel Comics of the late 40s to the late 50s. They had some great artists doing Westerns like Russ Heath. Some of the best Western covers I've ever seen. I'd run and get one now if I remember. It was Quick Trigger Western, something or other. Beautiful artwork. What are great Western comics?
Two-Fisted Tales.
Well, there were Western issues of Two-Fisted Tales. I think every issue had a different theme. Sometimes it'd be Civil War, sometimes it'd be Western stories. That's another good question, because a good question is one I'm not prepared for, that I haven't answered 100 times. What do you think hard? Western comics.
Somebody wants to know.
Holt, huh?
Somebody wants to know where Huey, Dewey, and Louie's parents are. You got to get into that.
No, I've hinted at that in the Don Rosa library, and people who don't understand those hints probably aren't reading the Don Rosa library because there's too many words, so they wouldn't get it anyway. But it's in there. I don't have to answer that. It's in the Don Rosa library, probably the second volume. Even has a storyboard script page where I'm alluding to it. That, in other words, a part of the story Return to Xanadu that I decided not to use, which, and if you know what Xanadu is in my comics, then you know where his parents are. Their parents are.
Quick idea. As a follow-up to the last vlog from the last signing tour, because you pointed out Svein Erik Soland, but we didn't actually find out who he was. Okay, we obviously know it if we read the Don Rosa library, but maybe you can just talk a bit about Svein Erik Soland and what significance he had in your
Okay, I've got
comic
3
life.
people I want to talk about now, and it's probably going to take an hour. And Svein Erik Soland was the editor of the Norwegian division of Egmont, and when I went to work for him, it was Gutenberg House. Egmont Gutenberg. No, it was named after the Gutenberg who invented the printing press. Egmont was the guy who came up, started the company, and he named it that. Anyway, he was the head, the editor-in-chief or the publisher of the Norwegian division. And I think he was the fellow who, the Norwegian division of Egmont has always been very advanced as far as they seem to have better ideas, and we're always telling, I wasn't part of this, but when I was working in the all through the 90s and the 2000s, it was the Norwegian, it was Svein Erik Soland, who was always suggesting ideas for stories and artists and editors to the main office in Copenhagen. And I think he's the guy who had seen my work in the Gladstone American Comics and had suggested that Nancy Daigo, I think that's pronounced, it's spelled with lots of J's and A's and R's, but it's pronounced Daigo. He suggested to her to try to hire me, and that's why she accepted me so quickly when I first sent them a telegram. This was in the 1970, when there wasn't, was there any internet or webmail? Was there email in 1970?
No.
We had to still send telegrams. I don't think those exist anymore, except to send money to people.
Yeah.
And then there's PayPal
Yeah.
and other things. So that's who Svein Erik Solund was. And he did come. He's, of course, retired. He came and sat with me. Well, we had a long talk right before the signing in Norway, the second signing. And he even came and sat with me. And I said, now you come and sit and see what you've created and how popular you've made me. And I think he really got a charge out of that. But he looks so good to me. He's, I can't imagine how old he is now, in late 80s. But and he looks sort of old, but he had the face of a child. I mean, he looks so, his eyes and his face were so young compared to the way he looked 30 years ago. I was so happy to see how well he's doing. But another person I want to talk about is named Bob Foster. He was an editor when the two big, you have to go back further and further. When Gladstone was doing so well after bringing Karl Barks and Floyd Gottfredson and Disney, in quotes, they're not Disney comics because Disney never had anything to do with them, but we'll call them Disney comics. When Bruce Hamilton brought those back to America in the late 80s, we didn't know that the comics were, these comics were, at least I didn't know these comics were still so popular in Europe. And eventually I went to work for Europe. And but when Disney didn't like seeing how popular Gladstone, how well they were selling, Disney decided for the first time ever in their history, they decided to publish their own comics. So they took the license away from Gladstone, which was made up of a company of people who loved the old Dell comics. I don't know if they loved Disney, but they loved the comics were loosely or not at all based on Disney characters, but which belonged to Disney by some fluke of legality. They took that back and they appointed two superhero comic writers and editors to run the company. After even the first year, their sales plummeted to like 10 or 20% of what they had been. And they fired those guys, and their associate editor was Bob Foster. And he became the editor of the American Disney line. Now, by this time, I was working for Europe. And Bob Foster called me up one day, it was about 1992, and he said that his marketing people were, they're still infatuated with superhero comics, American superhero comics, which were all doing 10-page or 10-issue, 12-issue miniseries to boost sales, because American comic sales have plummeted, have just gone down constantly for the last 50 years. And the only way to boost them is to do a 10-issue limited series or something, and then the graph will go. So they had told him that he had to commission the writing and drawing of a 12-issue series about the life of Scrooge McDuck. And he called me up and he said, he doesn't have anybody here who even knows who Scrooge McDuck is, except as a character on this TV kid cartoon. And he asked me if I would do it for the Disney company. And I said, I won't. And I think he was tricking me because he knew I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't work for Disney. And I said, but let me suggest it to Egmont. And then if Egmont does it, then you get it for free. Not only do they get it for free, but Egmont has to pay Disney to accept ownership of it in the form of royalties. It's an incredible, incredible deal. So right away, I didn't call him. I probably sent a fax to my editor. It was still Nancy Daigo. And I said, listen, Disney is preparing to create a life story of Scrooge McDuck. And there's nobody there who knows anything about it. But if they get away with it, it will become well, they will insist on it becoming the actual or the official life story.
Yeah.
And I said, you've got to, and I said, this character morally belonged to Dell Comics and Karl Barks, and now it belonged to Egmont, because Egmont was then the biggest creator of Disney comics in the world. And of course, their Disney comics were all based on Karl Barks's Donald Duck, with some minor characters like Mickey Mouse and the back of comics. But they were based on Dell Comics. They weren't based on anything Disney ever did. They were based on Dell Comics. And I thought Egmont was now the moral owner of all of these characters, and Egmont had to commission this before Disney did. And they thought about it, and they agreed with me. And then they said, yes, we'd like to do that. And would you do it? Now, that's what I was hoping they'd say, but I never suggested that. But that's what I was hoping they'd say. But anyway, the point is that it's Bob Foster, who died just last year, who gave me the idea of he didn't give me the idea for wanting to do a Life of Scrooge, but he gave me the idea, he gave me a reason to tell Egmont it had to be done before Disney themselves did it, and ruined it, and ruined the character, made a Disney character out of it instead of a Barks character. So that's the other fellow that I'd like to mention, along with, he's also responsible, maybe, for me being here on a worldwide live stream. Svein Erik Solund and Bob Foster. Svein Erik's still alive. And the third person in this triumvirate, maybe we can get to him later on, because that's even more important than those two.
Somebody's asking when did you really start drawing or considering a career of drawing, and when did you first draw a Scrooge?
I never considered a career of drawing, because I knew what I was going to do. I was born into a wealthy construction company family, and I was going to take over that job because I was highly qualified as the boss's son, or the boss's grandson. So I was always a cartoonist. I loved comic books and old movies on TV were the two, maybe the only two entertainments in my life. I kind of grew up alone way out in the country. My parents never were too old to be having kids at their age, so I just sort of took care of myself and entertained myself. But I knew I was never going to do this for a living. Now, if I'd thought about what I was going to do for a living, I'm not so sure it would have been comics. I think it would have been movies. I would have wanted to be a movie writer-director. And I think I would have been better than Steven Spielberg if I'd had a chance. Because I look at his movies now, I loved them at first, but now things about him I would have done differently. So I never did that until Gladstone Comics, who we've mentioned already a few times, when they started publishing and bringing back these comics to America for the first time in about 10 years. The Europeans still don't believe me when I say that Americans have completely forgotten these comics, because they were out of publication for nearly 10 years, off the newsstands. When they brought them back, I saw this was the chance that I had, that I've dreamt of my whole life, to write and draw one Uncle Scrooge comic adventure, just one. And I did that, and I don't want to get into that whole long story. That's related in the prefaces of the Don Rosa library that are scattered all over the floor here. I don't keep them here. These were 2 extra sets that I'm going to bequeath to somebody someday, or bestow on somebody, I should say. Stored down here. But I just did that one story, and that was nominated in the very first National American TV Comic Book Award of the year, which are now the Eisners, but these were first. They were the Harvey, not named after Will Eisner. These were named after Harvey Kurtzman. In the very first Kurtzman Awards, The Son of the Sun was nominated, as my first story, was nominated as the best comic book of the year in America, where it was still already just superhero. So that caught my attention. And so only within a year after that, I just was doing them on the side. I go to work at the Kino Rosa Company, which was being run by me and my uncle's stepson by that time. I'd work there maybe 2 or maybe it was 3 days a week figuring jobs, and then I'd stay home the other either 2 or 3 days, and I'd create some more comic books. And he finally said, "Well, the company's in your name, and you're not that interested." And he said, "Why don't we just liquidate it, and I can go work for somebody else that he'd probably already worked out." And I would have never suggested that myself. Because I'm a have a degree in civil engineering, but I don't know anything about civil engineering. I just slipped through. Wasn't a licensed civil engineer, so I never could have gotten a job in that department. So he forced me into making the decision to quit and try to do comic books for a living. And so that would have been about 1989, 1990 was the first time I ever considered doing comics for a living. And even when I decided that, I thought my wife would be taking care of me. She's a teacher. She's got a steady income, and she's got the health insurance. I thought she'd be taking care of me because there was no money in Disney comics in America. Nobody read them anymore. But that answers there's no question you can ask me that I can't have a long, stretched out answer.
It's been a long life for you. Yeah.
Is that and at some point during the answer, I start to wonder, what was the question? I wanted to know when I first considered doing this for a living. I was nearly 40 years old.
Here's another question about comics you've read. Do you remember which was the first duck story you ever read?
No, because I was looking at my sister's comics literally from birth. She was 11 years older than I was. And I always then say, and she still is. Mm-hmm. And everybody chuckles. And then I go on. So literally from birth, I was, if she'd let me get my hands near them, I was looking at her comics. And I'm sure I looked at them before I could read them. And then I read them, but there was no way that would have been when I was 5 or 6 years old. I'd like to think it was one of those two. Where's the third one? Have you got it? Where is it? Look, down there. I guess I should show that one. One owner copy, right? Nope, it's a new owner copy.
There you go.
Maybe it was this one. See, I'm showing it to the computer. See? Yeah. No, it's up here. That's the Marx experts will know that's the Town of Omelet story about when Donald Duck, of course he's not a duck, becomes a chicken farm or a chicken ranch. So maybe that was the first. The reason I showed that is that's the third of the one owner copies. I don't know why that one got saved. I think maybe it fell behind a chest of drawers, and I found it later because I got rid of all her comics and traded them in around 1962 on Superman comics at the 2-for-1 used bookstore. So no, I don't know what the first Marx comic I ever read.
Then somebody wanted to see, because they said, I don't know if it's true, but they said it's a rare comic. Donald Duck talks about kites or is flying a kite or something.
All right. Now the question is, where is it? Firestone. Maybe it's in here.
Somebody asked if you ever read or if you did, if you enjoyed any of the non-Barks Duck comics.
The only one I remember really enjoying, I turned into an Uncle Scrooge adventure. Yeah. It was the one with the sled frozen in the iceberg.
Right.
That was such a wonderful cinematic, and it involved Scrooge's life.
Was that Tony Strobel?
Yeah, Tony Strobel. I don't know who wrote it. And Black Pete was in it. He didn't belong there because he's here, can you hold that? Put that on the table. Here's Donald Duck Tells About Kites. This is a giveaway in California for the California power companies. And of course, it's about safety with when your kite gets caught on a
power line.
It's
better the other way. There you are.
Yeah.
It's short. It's less than maybe 6 pages. That was a nice shape. This would be a nice box to go through one issue at a time. This is all the March of Comics, Firestone giveaways, 4 colors to 35. These are the best Donald Duck comics, or the most valuable ones of the guys, the most expensive ones. And the ones by Barks, he did the 4 colors, and then he moved on to doing Uncle Scrooge 4 colors. Yeah, the March of Comics, there's the first. But somebody have to ask about those if they want to see those. Those are valuable. But I got these things back in the late 60s, early 70s, so I didn't have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for them. Probably $10 or $20, maybe. I'm ready for another comic book challenge. Don't let one slip by, but you can judge it better than Jano can.
Somebody said they know that you don't usually particularly like your own short gag stories, but that they're very big fan of Incident at McDuck Tower, and they want to know what your inspiration, how did the idea come about for the story?
I never know that. That was 30 years ago. Well, sometimes I do. Maybe Safety Last with Harold Lloyd?
Yeah.
Maybe. This is the silent movie where the comedian, a famous American movie comedian, was crawling up the side of a building and hanging off. I've always been fascinated by people hanging off of buildings. I probably saw that on Funny Flickers. Back, that's a noontime kids with a TV host,
local TV host,
and with puppets, and they'd show old movies, old silent movies
with Herkimer Kiwi and Tomfoolery.
I know Tomfoolery.
No, Sylvester Herkimer Kiwi. That was a different. I
thought this was an imposter
cartoon show. Yeah.
Local Herkimer Kiwi.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so long.
What am I talking about now? So that's the inspiration for that. But no, I never liked. I didn't never like. In fact, I think I'm rarely this immodest. Yeah, I didn't care much for the Incident on the McDuck Tower or any of the other ones except 2, especially Forget It. They were both Magic of Dispel. The other's A Matter of Some Gravity. Those were ingenious. I have to admit. I laugh out loud. I laugh out loud when I reread both of those. But no, but to come up with one gag that you can. An adventure story is lots of gags and lots of ideas. That's easy. But a 10-page story like Carl Barks did for decades that can sustain itself on basically one joke, I just couldn't do. There was 2 times I could do it, but I didn't think I did it any other time. I'm glad you liked the Incident at McDuck Tower. You could thank Harold Lloyd maybe for some of that.
March of Comics number 20.
It was just 10 minutes. Which one's number 20? No. One of the things we don't do is you don't ask me for a Donald Duck comic. You know I've got those. That's not a challenge. This is a challenge. Name a comic I don't have. Somebody last time named a Rudy Kazooie number 6. I didn't know it existed. I've got all the Rudy Kazooie 4 colors, but there was a Rudy Kazooie number 6.
Was there?
Yes.
And did you have it?
No, but I didn't know it existed.
Sorry.
So I had to get that down on my want list. That's what I wanted. Something that nobody's even heard of. Well, of course, a lot of Europeans have never heard of March of Comics. Those were comics that were given away for some reason only in shoe stores. Why that is, I don't know. Probably devised by the
Red Goose shoes.
Any shoe store. There's shoe stores all over America.
Lester Brown.
Yes, they're all shoe stores. Are you listening? So maybe these were organized by the shoe store conglomerates of America or something. But they were only given away in any branch or any brand of shoe store. And they were done by Dell Comics.
Must have a real tight union.
Yeah. They were done by Dell Comics and all original stories, and they went on for decades. And that's something I should have a collection of, but I don't. But I've got all the Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck March of Comics. I'll show you the cover. Should I? Well, somebody come up with a good challenge, though. But there's a lot of duck fans here, so they should see the rarest of American duck comics.
Okay. He's saying the number 20 is Darkest Africa.
But what's the cover look like? You can see on the. All right, so this whole stack. There's these plastic. Let's see, if I do it like this, I can go from backwards to forwards. And I'll. Well, those are. Let's not show those. That's okay. These are the actual Donald Duck. That's a 4-color. But he's asking for the freebies. So we'll go through them like this. See, there's the Old Castle Secret. That's a 4-color. But that's not a March of Comic. Frozen Gold. Here's the first actual Donald Duck comic. That's 4-color number 29. That's the first. The Mummy's Ring. Oh, what am I saying? No, that's not. That's the second. Here's everybody knows this. That's the first. Frozen Gold.
Pirates Gold.
Pirate.
Or you already did
Frozen Gold and Pirates Gold. He fixated on gold.
Yeah.
That's 4-color number 9. Every issue of 4-color comics was something different until it got its own title. Now, here's Donald and Mickey. Merry Christmas from the Firestone Dealers and Stores. That's Louisville. So this was originally given away at a Louisville Firestone. So I probably find this around here. I don't know what number that is, but these came out, of course, once a year. Oh, it's very appropriate for this time of year to be showing these. I think there was about 5 or 6 of those. What am I getting in there? Is there a comic in the bottom that's getting all squished?
No, this is just bigger.
Oh, it's stuck. Something about the electric
static electricity.
The static electricity. There's Merry Christmas from Firestone Dealers. So that's what it was. Oh, that's in a Mylar, tougher Mylar sleeve. That's where the store stamp's supposed to be. So they screwed up. Firestone Dealers. Yeah, this is just Firestone Dealers, and the specific Firestone dealer was supposed to stamp his name there, so he must have. Like this one. People's Hardware, store number 1, Florida Avenue, in some city. We don't know where. Oh, this is even there. That's the first Firestone giveaway. Got Bucky Bug and Mickey Mouse. We haven't got to the March of Comics yet. This was just a giveaway for Boston Store's new 8th floor Toy Town. It's a Walt Kelly cover. All right, where did this come from?
Underneath there. Maybe underneath there.
There's no way. I don't know if that's right. Well, because they don't have the. I'd have to open them up to check the date. Anyway, now these must be. Oops, these must be the March of Comics. No, this. That's another giveaway. I got that off eBay, or somebody got this off eBay. Was listed wrong, and this is like in mint condition. Am I holding it so?
That's good.
Yeah, we can see it.
Icy Frosty Twins. Is that a company ice cream store chain? But this is in perfect shape, like a file copy, and somebody listed it incorrectly on eBay. So I snatched it up for practically nothing. Now, finally, March of Comics. Yes, there's March of Comics number something. That looks like a Walt Kelly cover. These are all published by Dell. All of the stuff was published by Dell, of course. They're the only publisher allowed. And like I was saying, Red Goose shoes.
There's 2 comics in there.
There's 2 comics. No, there's 2 of them stuck together.
Oh, yes. They tricked you. Did it again.
I tricked myself. Yeah. March of Comics. That's not the one with
Red Goose March.
Yeah, Red Goose shoes.
Half the fun having
That's what you said.
shit. Yeah.
But that's boys and girls. So that's the. What did you say was on the cover of the one he wanted? I wish I could tell what Mark's stories in all these. I'm not that sharp. I'd have to open them up. Did somebody mention?
Oh, he did. He did. He said it was swinging into Donald's head.
Yeah, that was.
That's it right there. Yeah.
Let's see. I seem to recall this is the first one. Yeah, there's the.
There it is again for whoever asked.
Now, this apparently is from 1947, which is some very helpful person wrote 47 right on the cover. Probably did it in 1948, so I can't complain. Who knew these things would be worth hundreds of dollars, or now tens of thousands of dollars?
Don't want to think about it.
Perfect shape to investors. I better leave those
So
out.
in the meantime,
Squeeze them in there later.
Maybe a new question.
All right. I'll just
We have
stack these over here on the floor and hope it doesn't flood tonight.
We have a new question that is actually also combined with a possible comic book challenge, because somebody asked, "Hi Jano, Don, in the complete Bert Willoughby Papers book, there was an interview reprinted from 1977 where you talk about the Howard the Duck #1 scandal, but they couldn't find anything about it. Maybe you can talk about what that Howard the Duck #1 scandal was, and if you have it in your collection."
I used to, but I got rid of all the comics after 1970 through lack of interest. I didn't care for them. I certainly didn't care much for Howard the Duck. I don't know what this
Was
Howard the Duck
was that the scandal? That you didn't like it?
America. I have no idea what I was talking about. It was the Shazam #1 thing that I talk about. Wait, what's sort of a scandal? The person, is it somebody's?
They didn't reference it. They just asked.
And I mentioned this where?
In an interview from 1977.
The Bert Willoughby Papers reprint.
Well, he's the guy that reprinted the Bert Willoughby Papers.
Yeah, in the bonus materials, there was like an interview from 1977, and apparently you mentioned something about a Howard the Duck #1 scandal there, but you didn't go into any additional details.
No.
Now you'd have to go find me in 1977 and ask me what I was talking about. It wasn't a Shazam #1 scandal. I had my own scandal with a Shazam #1, but he's sure it was Howard the Duck.
Yep.
That's what he said.
I'll tell you my Shazam scandal. This was when did Shazam #1 come out? That was bringing Captain Marvel back. But they couldn't call it Captain Marvel because DC stupidly never trademarked the name Captain Marvel when they obtained it from when they didn't buy out. They just seized ownership of Fawcett Comics or something, so they became the owner of all the Fawcett comic book characters from the 30s and 40s, mostly from the 40s, early 50s, being Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr., which happens to be, can you see, that's my collection of Captain Marvel Jr. I've just bought a new one and I was still organizing them. I bought a stack of new ones. I got to find another box to put them in. So when Shazam #1 came out, and I'm a big comic book collector, and I was getting my comics from the you weren't looking.
That was clever.
I switched chairs on him. And I was getting my comics directly from the magazine distributor in Lexington when I was going to college. And the first issues of comics in the late 60s, early 70s didn't happen very often. It was a failing industry. It still is. But the only way they can stay in business is keep coming out with first issues that people will buy. In those days, they didn't want to come out with first issues because they wouldn't sell and they'd lose more money. But Shazam #1 was coming out, so I went and I bought an entire 300 issue bundle of Shazam #1 that I figured I would sell and make a lot of money from other comic collectors. And I took that home and I'm just thinking about that. and then realizing I was slipping into perversion.
Yes.
This is not Don Rosa. I'm not here to make profits off my fellow collectors. And I caught myself before I fell into that pit where virtually every comic collector has fallen deeply into now. They dive into it on purpose. The reason for collecting anything is to just make a profit off of it. You don't have to be interested in it. You should be. You'd spend too much time with it if you were too interested.
You keep it.
You don't want to keep it instead of getting rid of it. So I went to the local comic shop and I plopped down on their, and this cost like $70 or $80. I seem to recall, and I didn't have $70 or $80 to throw away when I was just in college. And I popped it down on their front table and I ripped it open and I said, just let anybody who wants one take one. And I taught myself a lesson. That's the only scandal I can think of about a number one. But that wasn't Howard the Duck. That was Shazam. Shazam.
Well, the guy has just added in the chat that he thinks the scandal had something to do with a price guide. But somebody else...
Are we back to Howard the Duck now?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah. And somebody else says Disney sued Marvel over Howard because he looked like Donald. That was in 1977. So maybe that was...
I don't think they sued anybody. They just sent him a letter and, inquiry. So they just said, put pants on it. That's all.
Yeah.
People, make everything seem dramatic.
Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for a really juicy comic book chapter.
Does Don have a set of
because Jano can't.
The very last question at the moment.
Well, no, but he doesn't know if it's obscure because he's German. He can't know.
I don't either.
You're German?
Was Don?
All right, this is one that's popped up twice. A 14-year-old French person is asking.
How do you know he's 14 years old?
Because he said so. He or she said so. But is asking, how do they make a career like you in the world of Scrooge? What would be your advice? Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
It'll only bring you heartbreak and
heartache.
No, don't.
Yeah.
But don't fall in love with
the comics industry. Of course, we're talking from the American point of view. We don't. I have no idea of what comics are like in Europe. I know it's much healthier over there, but over here, the comics industry is the longest failing industry in the history of anything. It's taken longer to die, but it's been in its death throes for decades.
Well, and it's only existing now because of the movies, and the TV shows, and the toys, and the games. And otherwise, it would have been. When I was going to my first comic book convention in 1970, DC and Marvel were saying, "We're going to be out of business in 5 years because the country's too big, and the buyers are spread too thin, and they're just not selling enough of the comics. Put 10 copies of every comic that was published on every newsstand in America, and then somebody buy one, and they'd have to give a full refund on the other 9.
And my goodness, magazines in general are practically a thing of the past.
Well,
everything's digital now, including comic books. So,
but I do get asked when I try not to be interviewed when I'm in Europe. And of course, it's easy to avoid being interviewed in America.
Yeah.
Thank gosh. But I do actively try not to be interviewed. But if the publisher really wants me to be interviewed to help them boost sales or something, I will. But then somebody, or even if I'm at a convention and somebody asks the same question, I say, I wouldn't get into this business now. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to, for the publisher, somebody asked me that, and I'm going to say, no, comics are going out of business. And they're saying,
you might as well ask somebody, how do I get in the business of making buggy whips?
Yeah.
It's about as appropriate.
But did he say, how could I get into the business of Uncle Scrooge comics and get big? Maybe be successful?
No, well,
because it was complete.
No, I don't think that they asked that. They just asked, well, how would you make it a career like yours?
You don't even know what happened to me.
Yeah.
I've never expected any of this.
Don's story really is a once in a lifetime story. No, it never has. It'll never be duplicated. A lot of things just magically fell into place that just are not going to happen.
If you keep talking about this, I'll get choked up because I still don't believe that it happened.
Yeah.
That sounds corny.
I'm in the same room with him. I can hardly believe it happened. But
I mean, you told me even when I was 35 years old that someday I'd be apparently the world's most famous living writer and artist of Uncle Scrooge comics. That's preposterous. I knew I was going to run the Don Rosa company the rest of my life. And here I'm sitting here and with a worldwide live stream going on, and there's probably at least 35, 40 people watching.
102.
Don't say it. Tell us later. I don't want to. I want to stop. First couple of times we did this, we had several thousand people on there.
Well, we did fill up a room at a college in Milan one time.
And but the next ones we did, they weren't as many attendees. They got, this guy is boring.
Yeah.
I want to talk about DuckTales. We don't want to hear about this. Well, here.
Something. I think it's something obscure. Does Don have the Superman Tim magazines and comics from 1942?
No, because I don't go back past 1946. The atomic age. The dropping of the atomic bomb is kind of
drew the line in the sand for you.
That's how they, because that's when World War II ended, and not because everybody loves atomic bombs, but that's when the war ended and all the soldiers came home, and that's when seriously, that's when comic books revolutionized. People who grew up, like the EC writers and artists who grew up with the bad comics during and before the World War II, were now adults and they loved comic books. The people who worked in comic books prior to World War II wanted to be, including Karl Barks, wanted to be working in newspaper comics. That's where the money and the fame was. Comic book work to them was hack work. However, there's a lot of people who did hack work, but there were some people who had self-respect, and whatever their job was, they did the best job they could. And there you have your Will Eisners and your Walt Kellys, and of course your Karl Barks. But they knew the money was in newspaper comics. But anyway, after World War II, people got into comics who loved comic books, like the EC people and lots of others. So that's why I decided to stop, just start my collection, or stop going backwards, more or less, is at the end of World War II. However, I could go up and show you Superman comics from number 3 on, but I've never, since Superman Tim comics were not part of this, the set. I like collecting sets, full sets. The challenge is not the value of each one. Like number 1 is I should say number 2 is no more important to me having the number 100, because it's having a full set. Now, number 1 has always been kind of special, but maybe just a little bit. Yeah, it is number 1.
Yeah.
So I can show him Superman comics from number 3 on, but no Superman Tim. But I've already qualified that. I don't have comics from that era.
Just ask.
He just asked. Don't bite his head off. Yeah. Next time we do this, you're going to be sitting on this side, and because people don't think I have pants, that's why that thing's over there spinning. They don't know what's going on. What are you doing?
You took the chair.
Yeah, I know.
Here is a duck question from a couple minutes ago, I think half an hour ago. To draw the covers of you did draw some covers for non-Bark stories for Gladstone, I think. Did you read the associated comics, or were you just given an outline or instructed what to draw?
That's what Bruce Hamilton wanted, and I needed money, and he didn't pay much. So that's what I did. I did like. I guess maybe they probably gave me the story to look at somehow. How would they do that in those days? They couldn't send me a file. I don't know, but I did it just to make money because I don't know anything about the foreign, especially in those days. I mean, what stories did I do?
Like, for instance, they mention the Lentils of Babylon by Romano Scarpa.
I think they sent that to me, and I know Romano Scarpa is very popular, and I read the story, and I didn't get it. But that's maybe I didn't grow up with Romano Scarpa. Maybe that's the trick. But no, I had no.
Do you want to answer what you think about the prices of real old comics today?
Well, it's investors are paying them. I can't compete with investors.
Right.
They buy comics and they buy paintings and they buy whatever they buy the same way I put money in the bank. But they think they're going to get better interest out of a collectible, and they're right. Collectibles never lose money, like even stocks and bonds do. Collectibles, the smartest investors in the world invest in these days probably comic books, or what else? No, unopened Atari games cartridges are especially unopened. That's one reason they want to slab the comics, because the unopened cartridges, those are like solid things. They want their comics to be like those really classy, cool looking. Stupid. It's people totally misunderstanding the whole joy of collecting.
Yeah. If I understand why you were asking that question, if from a layperson's point of view, you and I can't afford to buy the comics we would love to have. It just can't happen. I'm practically the same age Don is. I'd love to have a room like this. I have a comic collection, but it's limited to one very short wall because I can't afford that. I'm just a normal person.
I bought all these 40 years ago.
Right. And if you want to own ECs, the only way, if you're interested in the EC comics, the only way to do that is to buy reprints, and probably in book form. And probably in book form. EC is one of the most reprinted comics that ever existed. But even so, finding certain reprinted comic book issues is hard and expensive to do. Most people can't do it.
The richest person in the world could not. I don't know how many years, if ever, they could accumulate a collection like this. They could accumulate a more valuable collection because they just buy slab 9.8 copies and a stack this would be worth this whole room. Yeah. Only to another investor, though. But I've got the best collection.
But somebody that wants to love them, read them, enjoy them, revel in them in the way they were intended to be enjoyed, that person can't have them. You can't have them. I'm sorry, you can't have them.
Even these TV guides. I'll reach over sometimes and get one from the mid '60s and pull it out and read through it night by night, and I'll remember what I was watching that night. Right. Oh, I'm not crazy. I don't know where to start that story.
Yeah. You're going to have to
start if
you're ever going to end it.
All right. I wanted to talk about the third person who also died. No, Fine Art didn't die. What do you mean? But I've got best friends all over the world, I guess. I'd like to think. But I'm an eccentric recluse in real life. Yeah. I only had two friends in Louisville. What's your name? Dan. Dan is one of them. But Ray Fouché was probably my oldest and best friend, and he died about a year ago. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I can't. Well, I don't want to remember the exact date, but I'd like to talk about him for a moment. I meant to sort of write something on the Facebook page for a year. I don't know where to start, but it's getting so late, and this was the only chance for a live stream this year. So I'd like to talk about Ray Fouché, and a lot of people who are listening to me right now know that name. They've met him. He'd travel with me to comic conventions. Well, let me start at the beginning. Ray Fouché. Now you're going to think this is I'm making this story up. Ray Fouché and I were born on the same day in the same maternity ward on June 29th, 1951. And we didn't see each other again.
You didn't see each other then.
Oh, maybe so.
Maybe across the room.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We heard each other.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right there in the same room.
Yeah.
Screaming. Didn't see him again until, I guess, 1965, when we turned up in the same Catholic all-boys school, St. Xavier High School in Louisville, Kentucky. Same grade, of course, and met each other, not until we were sophomores or juniors. And turned out we were both the first comic book collectors we had ever met. He and I both became comic book collectors. And after that, well, before that, I'd always been a great fan of comics and a cartoonist, constantly drawing comic books. We've got them, all the comic books I ever drew. You can't see the container. They're in a metal case behind the TV guides. That's how I would entertain myself as a kid. If I wasn't watching TV or reading comic books, I was creating comic books that nobody would see but me. But my parents would never encourage me, because they knew they knew what I was going to do. I was going to be the owner of the president of the Don Rosa company. So I never got any sort of encouragement for my cartooning until I met Ray Fouché. And
show him a picture.
Yeah. He's got one of them devices that have pictures in it.
Yeah. See if I can make
Ray Fouché.
See if I can make this work.
Is that a young picture?
It's youngish.
You took it?
No. The trouble with telephones is they don't photograph very well. But that's here we go. There we go.
Can't see it from here.
Sort of see him.
All right. Anyway, so he encouraged me. I would spend my. He sort of introduced me to his circle of friends, and they were all very intelligent. They were all I thought I was smart. In the first 8 years of my education were in a very, because I grew up in a wealthy family. It was in a very swanky prep school. It was the St. Thomas Aquinas Preparatory Academy, where we wore our little British style uniforms, gray pants, marine coat, or jacket, a little emblem, and a striped maroon and gray tie, to the school colors, just like British royalty. But I switched over to a regular high school. It was still one of the better high schools in town, a private high school. And I wasn't the smartest kid in the class anymore, like I was with all those stupid rich kids. I was pretty smart. I was in the second class, but Ray Fouché and his friends were in the top class, and he let me. That was the first group of friends I ever had. And he encouraged me, and we would do comics together. In fact, some of the comics he and I did have been published in the European Don Rosa collection. The great big book came out about 15 years ago, 9 volumes. And we traveled to he taught me everything I know about comic book collecting. He was a member in the late 60s of comic book collecting fandom, of which in the United States there were just about 2,000 people in total. And he showed me all the fanzines and introduced me to everything about comic book collecting, and where I could go and buy through the mail comic books for my swelling collection. He also went with me to all of our first comic book conventions. 1970, we went to the only comic book convention I think there was in the country at the time, in New York City, the New York Comic Art Convention. Anyway, he was my friend, but he encouraged me. So if it hadn't been for Ray Fouché, same with my sister and Svein Erik Soland and other people who have been, even Bruce Hamilton, who I never liked personally, but if not for Bruce Hamilton, there's another reason I just wouldn't be here. And nothing of this would have ever happened to me. So I just wanted to make sure that this is one of the people that I owe my life, if that includes everything I've ever done, and everything that everybody out there in the dark
Yeah, out there in the dark. Yeah.
Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. If you wouldn't know me if it wasn't for, I think, Ray Fouché. And it feels, I mean, I've known people who've died, but I've never had a feeling that when I sit and think Ray Fouché is no longer here. That's not right. We've led parallel lives. He died rather tragically. He contracted some rare form of cancer, and spinal cancer. I've never tried to find out the details of it. I don't know why I would want to, but I do know that I hadn't gone to comic book conventions with him for about 5 years. We'd still go to at least 1 or 2 comic conventions, go to Charlotte, go to Baltimore, go to 2 or 3 other annual comic conventions. And I'd see him a couple of times a year. I'd communicate with him, especially email, pretty often. But I'd see him 2 or 3 times a year, and then we stopped for some reason. And so he was cured of the cancer. He was actually cured of the cancer, or at least put in remission. And we agreed to renew old times and go to a convention. I needed to drive somebody to drive me to Cincinnati because I can't drive my own cars. They're kind of old. They're collector's cars. If I drive them, I don't put them in blocks of plastic. But I'm not going to take them from Louisville to Cincinnati, but I also can't fly from Louisville to Cincinnati because nobody in their right mind would do that. So there's no flights. But he was going to drive me to Cincinnati, and we were going to do that one more time. And then he contacted me and said he didn't have enough energy for that, and we'd have to put that off. But apparently what happened was he contracted an infection due to his treatment.
Post-operative infection.
Yeah, which I guess happens, and I don't know.
He went septic.
Yeah, and he just died quickly. And when his wife called me and told me he was in the hospital, I wanted to come visit. And she said, but he wouldn't know you were there. But he might recover. She said he's ups and downs. And but then the next time she called me, he died. He had died. And Dan and I have been. Well, that's another story. Anyway, I wanted to mention him because he's one of the people that I owe my life, as it is, to, I think. So anyway, now, what else?
Back to our regularly scheduled program.
And I don't know. Jano, are you awake?
I'm here, yes.
Oh, okay, good. Are you going to cut us off at in 2 minutes?
No, we can. We can continue as long as we want, as long as you want.
Because we have stuff to do computer-wise after this ends. So we'll. Now I'm going to make him the villain. How much longer would you like to go? Any at all?
If it makes sense to continue, we can continue.
Well, we have two more questions for the moment, and if not any other questions come in, we can wrap it up by then. So one question was, I think could be interesting because somebody is asking that during the the signings and the tours, there are always many people telling you about how your comics have influenced their life and what they do and what they meant to them. And are there any such stories in particular that you remember?
Oh, I don't know. That's really a personal thing that because they tell me sometimes like they've had trouble in their lives and the stories have helped keep them alive and things, and I just I don't know how to deal with that, or any more than I do the people that just lavish me with praise. I just don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. I don't know. I wish I'd been keeping a diary. I save all my mail. And in a few weeks, I'll make another list of all the really nice mail that I've received all year. Primarily people handing me notes in person at conventions. And since we did 3 different European tours this year, I've got quite a stack. But no, that's an excellent question. But especially this late to the show, that would take some thought.
Save that for the next show.
Yeah.
And the other
People may
question
want to see what I
was...
really look like.
Was that the other question? What?
No.
You really look like.
The other question was, does Don have a single favorite panel of his own stories?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a single favorite panel of Karl Marx's stories. I do that.
You can say both.
You can say both.
See?
Both. No, of course, it's the panel. It was only a half-page panel, and it's better than any Jack Kirby 2-page spreads that I've ever seen. Was the dam breaking of the money lake and all the coins falling and the wooden beams sticking out like in 3D, and every coin drawn individually, and the water swooping up in such graceful waves. That was in the first issue of Uncle Scrooge. That's one of the reasons I love that. In my own stories. Well, because I recreated a panel for one of my fanzine stories. I think the explosion of the mountain where the temple of Manco Capac was, and it blew the temple into orbit. Practically, no, it fell down in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
What are the odds of that?
Yes.
I thought that the cover, is that a single panel? The cover to the cowboy captain of the Cutty Sark. That was a doozy. And they sold that at Heritage a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't get that.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's not the point.
No, because people want pictures that have Donald and Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie all together. But this was just a barely recognizable, very tiny Scrooge in the middle of all this chaos, flames and lava and tidal waves and ships falling and cats dogs and cats living together. No human being would stack books like this. No, again, gosh, I should be prepared. I should send these questions in early so I can think. My favorite panel. That's a favorite cover, but it's apparently only I like it. Well, before he cuts us off, no.
That's a suggestion for you, Jano. Next time you do this,
oh, maybe does
you
that.
could, oh, do you?
Yeah,
you collect questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially well, we like to collect the comic book challenges so somebody can judge, which Jano can't, which is really an obscure comic, but that's cheating. I shouldn't have them in advance. They have to be right. I have to.
Well, he can have them. He just won't tell you.
But no, he won't recognize which ones are
good.
good.
I see.
Yeah, I've got no clue which ones are good or which ones aren't. But here's a question, and maybe let's end with that one on a lighthearted note. Somebody wants to know how Deirdre the deer and her family are doing, and are they still visiting?
No. We think some trouble. Deirdre and the whole why did they ask this? Deirdre and her whole flock seem to disappear except for one doe and 2 young does. And all summer, for about the beginning, maybe in the spring, we've had a serious problem with those 3 deer because the puppies never paid much attention to the deer. But now because they'd bark at the deer would leave. But now this one doe, apparently in protection of the 2 smaller does, I assume they're fawns from, and I don't even know if it's Deirdre. I'd like to think not. No, because Deirdre never acted this way. She challenges the puppies. I've never seen a nasty deer. The puppies would bark at her, and this doe would just stare at her and not flinch. And if they started coming close to her, she'd rush them and try to trample them, try to hurt them, try to kill them. I've never known that. A murderous deer. And we would lose track of the puppies because they would chase this deer all over the 30 acres. And we'd have to go out there when the sun was going down and try to catch them. And the problem was the deer they would just bark and bark and bark, and the deer would stand there and stare and just with the other two small deer behind them and challenge the puppies to come forward. But when I would show up to try to catch the puppies, the deer would start to, and I'd have to shout at the deer to run, because when I would show up, it would start getting really aggressive and it would lunge at the puppies. I don't know why it would wait till I'd show up, like showing off. I even got an air horn to scare it. So as soon as I show up, the deer would run off a little bit, and then the puppies would chase the deer, and I'd have walk some more, and the puppies would be right there in front of me, and the deer would run off, and then the puppies would run off. So I was getting a lot of exercise. And this was going on practically every night, because we have to get these puppies in before it's dark, or they won't find their way back to the house. I was even calling animal management and animal control people to come out and shoot this deer. I'm not going to shoot him. I don't have a gun, and I'm not going to kill an animal, but I was going to hire somebody to shoot the deer, because it was a menace and possibly a deadly menace to my dogs. But then I think one of the problems was me, that I would go out there and try to do something about it, which would set something off. So I think we saw him just yesterday, but I was thinking right outside by the front gate is a dead deer that got hit by a car.
Is it still there?
Yeah. Well, who's going to move it? It's going to disappear.
I'm not.
The vultures work on it every time. It'll be gone in no time.
All right.
And I was sure hoping that was that deer, because that was a menace deer. I don't like to kill animals, and I still couldn't have shot I don't like to have a gun, and I wouldn't have been able to shoot a deer.
You've got one that's going rogue.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling the people I was calling. I got a rogue deer, like a rogue elephant. It's turned mean, and I've never heard this. It wasn't a buck or anything. It was just a doe. So anyway, I think that deer's still out there, but they're learning to get along a little bit. And I've learned not to go out and try to catch the dogs. Oh, that's the thing. We keep them in. We do have to keep them in after about 3 o'clock, because if we let them out and it gets too close to dark, I'm going to have to go get them. And if they're barking at the deer, anyway, this is really a morbid episode.
Yeah, that was not really the lighthearted end we were hoping for the stream, but what can you do?
I'm not feeding them anymore. I go out and talk to them and apologize. I'm not feeding you guys anymore. They just look at me. It's an idiot with a corn again. And they just stare at me. They're still not scared of me, but I hope the one that was causing trouble is laying out by the front gate. I hope it had not.
Hopefully,
I hate to see it.
Hopefully, we'll have a better story for you next time.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Questions in advance. No, it's no fun. I want to get the questions in advance. It's funnier to see my reaction when what.
Anyway, we're at the 2 hours and 6 minutes marks, and not really many more questions coming in. So I'd say let's wrap it up, especially if you have still something to work on the computer.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, that's it for this stream. That's it for this year. We will be back surely at some point next year. And if you come to one of the signing tours, come by and say hi. And maybe we will do a stream sometime during the year, maybe only next Christmas again.
If I could have Dan here to help keep me amused, I'd like to do this more often. If I'm just sitting here and listening to myself talk, I get kind of bored. But
thanks for
you heard it here, folks. Thanks, Dan, for joining us.
Sure.
And then thanks everybody who was watching this, and also, of course, the people who are watching it later on the recorded version. And yeah, that's it from the Don Rosa social media for this year. See you next year, and in the meantime, Merry Christmas if you celebrate, otherwise happy holidays, happy end of the year, and have a great start into the new year. And see you soon.
And watch out for rogue deer.
Yeah.
Bye.